This is part 3 in the Read 4C Vice Rebuild series. If you haven't seen part 2, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we'll be cleaning up some parts with wire wheels and doing a little bit of painting. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. We got a lot to cover, so let's get to it. My initial plan was just to wire wheel all of these large pieces. And here I'm just using a wire wheel on an angle grinder. And as I got done with this first piece, which is the dynamic jaw and slide bar, I realized that there were some interior areas that, one, you can't really get to very easily with a wire wheel, and two, they're going to be prone to rust on them. So my overall plan is to not paint this whole vise, but I did want to go ahead and paint some of the interior areas just to cut down on the possibility of rust. So if I had thought about this before I ever started the wire wheeling, I would have done all the painting first and then came back and cleaned everything up with the wire wheel. And that's because, well, there's a positive and a negative to that. The positive is that if I have any overspray with the paint, I can just wire wheel it off. But the negative is you stand a chance of hitting the painted area with the wire wheel, and then you're going to have to go back and repaint. So kind of a damned if you do and damned if you don't chicken and egg thing. But so after I got done with the angle grinder, I've got a bunch of bottle brushes. These are brass and steel brushes that I use with a driver or drill, and I can then clean out some of these areas. And there's a deeper bore here where that square is that I need to clean as well. And it was milled, but very poorly milled. So getting it smooth on the inside isn't going to be super important because nothing actually touches it. It's kind of just a hole area that allows the lead screw or spindle to pass through. So I'm just using various brushes here to get as much of that area on the inside clean as I can. And this is where we go into the masking. So we're going to mask off everything on the dynamic jaw and slide that is not going to get painted. And then we are going to do the same masking to the static jaw and the base. So everything in this opening that you can see here, this initial bore, is not going to get painted. And that's why we're masking it. But everything past that going down into the slide will get painted. And that big pocket area for the pipe jaw inserts is going to get painted as well. And so that's kind of the two areas that are going to get painted on this part. So I probably could have saved doing a lot of the masking and just used sheets of paper in the larger areas, but I was already into it knee deep at this point. So I was like, screw it. I've got a ton of rolls of masking paint, tape. So not a problem. And one thing to note is in the slide area here, I'm keeping that edge, that the lip, if you will, from where the cutout is, that big long rectangle and the kind of keyhole cutout on the end, that edge is going to get painted as well. So you can kind of see where we're heading with this. And I'm also going to paint that little area that's between the jaw and the slide itself. It's got that kind of half moon shape on the sides. I'm painting that on both sides and on the very top. And that's the unmilled area of the slide. But everything that's got tape on it obviously is not going to get paint. That's the dynamic jaw. So here we are with the static jaw. And we're basically going to be painting everything. Well, we're going to paint that pocket that's for the pipe jaw inserts. And then we've got some milled surfaces inside the bottom cavity that the slide slides on. And you've also got some dovetails inside there that the main screw nut or vice nut interacts with. And so those areas are going to get masked off as well. So one thing to note is the walls kind of each opening on each end of this has about a 1 inch wide milled surface that the slide slides along. And so we're not going to paint them. So we'll be masking them as well. But yeah, so this actually is probably the most involved masking part of everything that we're doing here, just because there are so many little angles and edges like those dovetails and the side milled surfaces on the openings, as well as the slide milled surfaces that are on the bottom of the base that the slide actually slides on. And you notice probably on the front side of the opening, you've got that tongue that kind of sticks out that's got those, it's got like a milled area around the outside of it, and the center of it is not milled. And there are two little pads in the very back of the opening that are also milled, and they're completely level with the front tongue, if you will. And that's kind of important when we get to dressing all of those milled surfaces after we've done all the painting and everything. But that'll be another video. So the the bottom of the static jaw is milled, but it's not a super important milled surface. It just allows the static jaw to rotate on the swivel base. So we're not going to worry about we're not going to paint it, obviously, but at the same time, we're not going to be worried about dressing it as much as those areas where the slide interacts with the static jaw. So here we have the base. We're looking at the bottom side of it, and we're going to paint that center area for no good reason other than I just decided I was going to paint it, but it does get rusty, so no big deal. Now there is a milled area or milled surface on the boss for that big screw or bolt that goes in there. And I forgot to mask that off. So once we get done painting, I come back and sand that and get the paint off of it. But here we are on the top side of the base now. And we're just going to mask off the track in the center and then the outer track that the static jaw rotates on. And then we're going to be painting everything on the inside where those swivel locks engage with the teeth on the inside, because you can see that that area gets really rusty in there. So after we got everything masked off, this is the primer that I like to use. It's a self-etching primer. And I always try to use the same primer on pretty much everything I work on. So we're going to prime everything that's getting painted. And this is just going to be ramped footage of me doing all of that priming. I'm putting that primer on there pretty heavy. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, my paint technique is I like to paint pretty thick coats as opposed to several light coats. And for some people, that doesn't work for them. They get runs or they'll get orange peel. But for me, it works fine. And it lets me put a thicker coat on there to better protect the whatever I'm trying to protect. And here I forgot to mask off those two little ramps on the back that I was talking about. So those got masked real quick. And then we went back to painting or priming. So that's the static jaw, and it's primed now, so we can move it. And we've got the base. Some of those areas are kind of hard to get to, but no big deal. We managed to get taken care of. And then this is the paint that we're going to use. It is a Rust-Oleum semi-gloss protective enamel. And it is 376909 is the paint number. But nothing special about it. It's just protective enamel paint that is semi-gloss. And when you're applying a paint to something like this, a lot of times I like using a hammered finish because it meshes really well with the overall look of that cast iron. But I opted just for the semi-gloss regular enamel. So we're just going to shoot all three of those parts. And my wait time from when I did the priming to when I did the painting is roughly an hour from when I prime to when I start painting. But when you're doing several pieces like this, generally by the time you're done shooting the primer on the last piece, you're ready to start painting on that first piece. So this is about an hour and a half later. I like to remove the masking as fast as I can after I paint something. I'll let it sit for about an hour and let it get to that tacky but not dry point. And that's when I want to remove that masking because sometimes if you wait until the paint is fully cured, when you go to remove the masking, it won't have crisp edges where the masking tape is. It'll take some of the paint with it. And so I prevent that from happening by removing the masking while the paint is still in that curing process. But we'll remove all the masking and then we'll set these pieces aside and let them cure for probably 24 to 48 hours. Now, I did say that the rest of the vise is going to remain raw, no paint on it, or it won't be one solid paint coat. And that is a choice. You know, you can paint your vise whatever color you want. I like the raw metal look of a vise, especially the reed vices. I think they look really good, raw metalled. But there are some options on coating it where you can keep that raw appearance, Cerakote makes a clear coat for firearms that is extremely durable, and it's very, very thin. And I thought about doing the Cerakote clear coat on this vise, but my other Reed vise, I just coated it with that super slick stuff. That lubricant that I use, literally called super slick stuff. And it has not rusted at all since I did that. So I think that's where we're going to go with this. When we get to the last stages of the rebuild. And I will be coming back with a paintbrush and painting on all of the lettering that's on the side of the static jaw, all of that Reed logo and the patent number and all of that. So we'll paint that probably again with black. We might even use a paint pen as opposed to a brush. But I think that black is a nice contrast, like that one area between the slide and the jaw. Adds a little character to it. So, and you'll definitely notice there are a lot of hammer marks and dings in this vise. And for the most part, we're not going to be grinding those down. We're going to leave them there. So here we are 48 hours after everything was painted and we removed that masking. And we're ready to finish cleaning up the slide and dynamic jaw. So here I'm just using a bottle brush and I'm cleaning out all of those bores that we're going to have pins running through, or their oil ports or screw holes, to make sure A, that we don't have any paint or primer in them, and B, that there's no rust that has developed since we de-rusted this. So those little bottle brushes really come in handy. You can see that blue case in the top left-hand corner. That's how they come. I got them off of Amazon, and it was like $20 for a full set. So we're just taking care here that we're not going to strip out any of these screw holes. This is a brass wire brush as opposed to the steel brush. That should be non-marring, if you will, or less marring, most likely. So we did not clean this back edge with the wire wheel when we wire wheeled the slide, so I'm just cleaning that up now. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to dress the slide. And this milled surface and all four sides of the slide itself are meant to interact with the milled surfaces inside the static jaw. And if there are any burrs or bumps, deformities at all, the vise is not going to slide smoothly. And we want that buttery smooth slide. So here I've just taken some sandpaper and glued it to some paint stirrer sticks. And we're just cleaning up those four sides with these. And I've got various grits going from 180 grit all the way up to 1,000 grit. And we're not trying to remove any of the dings or anything like that. We're actually trying to not remove material at all. There are areas on the very edges, like if you look at it from the top coming down onto this side, where the metal has kind of rolled over a little bit, where people have smacked it with a hammer or whatever, And so we're just cleaning up that mushrooming effect as it protrudes over that edge. And it's the same on all 4 of the sides. So next we're going to go ahead and wire wheel, because we never did that to these other parts. So we've got the base here, and we're just wire wheeling the milled surface on top first. And then we've got all of the outside of it. There was a little bit of paint left in some areas. That wire wheel takes care of all of that. So if you didn't want to do the soaking and derusting like I did in the second video, you could just take the vise apart and go straight to using a wire wheel like this and cleaning up the vise that way. You're going to contend with grease and oil, but it can certainly be done. And for something as big as this vise, you may not have a container or a plastic bin big enough for all these parts like I do. So I'm just using these little sanding discs on a sponge that's in my driver to clean up that milled surface I was talking about that we painted over. And then we'll clean up those pads for the base. And then we'll come back and just sort of clean up that milled surface on the top, the 2 rings that the static jaw rides on. And then we're going to clean those bores with another bottle brush. So this one's obviously the pass-through for the large screw or bolt. And it needs to be able to slide in there or rotate in there without any binding up. And then we've got those mounting holes in the base. So we're just brushing them out as well. Obviously, all of this wire wheeling and these brushes are going to produce a lot of dust. So we just need to make sure that we blow everything off with compressed air after we're done with this part. But that's going to wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. In the next video, we will continue with this process and continue cleaning these parts. And then we'll get into a little bit of fabrication. So as always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.